Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. So happy you're here. To those that have joined us before, welcome back. We're so glad to see you. For newcomers, you are in for a treat today and always. But we are so excited to welcome Leo Chan to our discussion today. Version of Innovating Out Loud. We explained to Leo that our tagline is Say It Ugly. And hopefully for those of you that have been here before, you know what that means. But to us, it really just means not being super scripted, not being super rigid, and really speaking from the head and the heart on topics surrounding innovation. And so, just as a reminder, this kind of series is brought to you by Regenerous Labs. Joanne Garbin and I are both co-founders of this lab, and we do all sorts of things to kind of reimagining data centers and rethinking how products are done, what knowledge looks like in today's world, building ecosystems. You name it, we're thinking about it, we're building it. Joanne, do you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself before we introduce Leo as a refresher and maybe an intro to some newcomers?
Sure. For anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Joanne Garbin. I am one of the founders, as Taryn said. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur, which means I'm also a lifelong innovator because I'm always trying to create something out of nothing and pay my bills. And I'm the co author of The Insider's Guide to Innovation at Microsoft, which I wrote with my friend Dean Carrigan, also a Microsoftie, while I was at Microsoft as the director of innovation in our Data Center of the Future program.
Awesome. Thank you, thank you. And now we get the pleasure of introducing Leo. Leo's a keynote speaker, a corporate trainer, and a Lego Serious Play facilitator. And I will let him explain to you all exactly what that means. So, Leo, please introduce yourself, let us know what you do, and then we'll jump into the convo.
All right. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Leo Chan. I am exactly what Sharon just said. So I call myself the Chief Innovation Igniter of Abound Innovation Inc. So I am basically a guy who wants to teach innovation and creativity to everybody. I have my own curriculum called the Innovators OS with 15 different modules on how to be more innovative in terms of mindset and skill set. I do keynote talks around the globe, and I'm a Lego Serious Play facilitator, which I know we're talking about. That's why I'm wearing this t-shirt, because it's one of the most interesting business methodologies you may or may never have heard about, and it's super fun to unlock as we get into innovation, creativity, and play.
Awesome. Thank you, Leo. Just as a heads up, there is a Q&A that we will hit at the end of this discussion. So please enter into the comments some Q&A. And then also, just as a teaser, Leo has made available some of his LinkedIn learning courses to those
Mhm.
attending here on cue. And the link to those were dropped right here, kind of in the Q&A chat section, as well as we'll email it out. But just wanted to give a quick heads up that that's going to be available as well. But let's dive in. I'm so excited about this topic, the idea primarily of play and joy, and what it means in the workplace and what it means to innovation. And so maybe just Joanne, Leo, like what comes to your mind? How do you frame up and how do you think about play and innovation in the workplace?
I'm deferring to the expert here. Go,
I was
Leo.
gonna, I was gonna say that's you, Joe. I want to hear from you. Well, I've always been someone who enjoyed play on a personal level, and I think it's always been a part of my personality growing up. I actually didn't grow up playing with Lego, by the way, but it was always someone that I when I was growing up with my brother and I, we would play with stuffed animals and use our imagination and all of that. And I actually feel like that helps me be more creative as an adult because I let that part of me continue to grow. And I think as a lot of us, it's just not utilized as much. I see creativity and innovation like a muscle we build, like just like these my big biceps here, if I don't work them out, they'll get weaker. And so
Right.
it's a constant practice and discipline to continue to use these muscles as we grow up and things like that. Otherwise, it will atrophy, and then we will notice in terms of our idea generation capability and all of that, that will start to weaken. So I think play just allows a bed of us to like really just dive in and explore. And I think it allows us to not be to take work so seriously. I think
Mhm.
innovating is this really exciting thing, but I also say it's terrifying because we don't know what's going to work. And if
Yeah.
we approach it without a playful mindset, we can get all in our heads and just get stuck really quick and, all of that. But Joanne, I'm going to throw it back
Yeah.
over to you now.
I mean, that's the essence of Say It Ugly, right? It's to get people out of their heads and stop editing and confining and worrying about perfection. It's what I like about, and Say It Ugly, it betrays my Jersey roots. Like that sounds like a Jersey thing to say. Whereas play is just such a happy, it just has joy in it, right? And I didn't know about Lego Serious Play before I met you. And I think my first message to you was, what is this and how do I get involved? Because Lego actually has a big part of my background. I grew up playing with Legos. I became a mechanical engineer because I got introduced to all the engineering disciplines, and the only one that showed up with a box of Legos was mechanical. And I was like, that's my discipline right there. And I grew up with a mom who plays. So she's an artist and a musician. So I grew up in a household where I didn't know that it was like a thing that other people weren't doing, but we just played with stuff. We would tear up things and build things and, you know, take what we had and make it into something new. And there's a lot of there's a lot of things that happen between like age 5 and 25 that try to push that part of you away and give you rules and boundaries. And I think some of us are naturally inclined to push at those boundaries and, color outside the lines. And that's great. But if that's all we're relying on, we're missing out on the creative abilities of so many people. And those people are also missing out on daily fun and joy. And that's why, I was so excited when you agreed to come on and we've gotten to know each other. So, because let's figure out, not about us figuring out how to play more, but how do we bring it into the everyday life of people who for decades have been told, stay in line, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Love that. Joanne, when you were talking, you said you had a question. What is Lego Serious Play? And maybe this is an opportune moment to, Leo, have you answer that question.
The headline I created for it is like to say it's Lego for adults in business. And it is a methodology that was developed by Lego Group in conjunction with these really smart professors from IND Switzerland. So it was developed in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was released kind of to the wild. And it basically is and I'm holding a little model here, but it's basically a way
Perfect.
to think with your hands instead of just using your mouth. And so the way it works is you're given Lego. You obviously use Lego, but you're given Lego, and it's a facilitated methodology. So there's a facilitator like myself, and I will walk you through certain prompts to start having you think, and then engaging and sharing. And so these models are not just things you just create; they actually become the basis of knowledge. And
Mhm.
so, as an example, like this little thing here represents the strengths that I bring to a team. And so I
Wow.
can walk you through just how this works. So any prompt can be used, but for example, let's just say I would ask all of you, what's a strength that you bring to the team you work on? Traditionally you might use your mouth and talk about it, but we can do it in Lego. So I built this thing. He's wearing blue because my favorite color is blue. He's holding a little flag here because I like to champion and come up with lots of ideas. There's a little propeller on the back because I like to get stuff done. One of my strengths finder is achiever, so like I really like to get things done. I have a clear vision for the future. If you can see this clear piece up here, which means that when I can envision a new possibility, I'm going to run after it. You can see I'm standing on green because I'm a growth oriented person, and I think that's important in the work that we do. lots of colors represent me, my playful personality. I'm bringing that, and I think it's a strength of mine that I bring to the team because it gives a light touch. It invites people into the journey. I'm also a huge collaborator, so there's little eyeballs all here, and so that represents that I like to bring people on the journey with me. It's not just about me, coming up with it on my own. And then finally, there's Joanne, you'll appreciate this. I have bridges here. One here that goes nowhere because that's innovation sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's one over a blue because we like blue oceans and like new areas. And so sometimes those ideas do go somewhere, which is great. So you can see it really engages you differently. It's a visual, it's an auditory, and it's a kinesthetic way of learning. And it's wonderful because we use metaphor and storytelling, and you can create all sorts of really interesting things. Plus, it unlocks creativity in a way that you would not imagine, and it's playfully fun. So you can actually enjoy the work as you're doing it. And I'm always, if you see photos of me in sessions, my mouth is always like, wow, that is so cool. I'm like, what did you build? I'm like, I want to know. Like, I'm really leaned in, and everybody does that. Like, we're curious, and it's just a really amazing way to engage and do business in all sorts of different realms. So that's in a nutshell how Lego Serious Play works.
Perfect. Thank you. I think right, I think intuitively when we think about play, we know it feels good and we've done it and it feels, but there's actually evidence that it lowers psychological barriers as well. Like it fundamentally shifts how we think, how we're able to ideate, how we're able to problem solve, etc. So what have you both found kind of in your work that supports that claim and kind of further backs that up?
Yeah, as you were going, Leo, I was thinking of like all the dots that were connecting. It's like we talk, if you read my book or a lot of books on innovation, we talk about analogical thinking. We talk about the adjacent possible. So you're really practicing that muscle through what Leo just described, but it also gave me flashbacks in a good way to my biomimicry classes and workshops where the biomimics bring in natural artifacts and we blindfold ourselves and your partner hands you something and you're supposed to touch and feel it and try to figure out what this thing is and what it does and why it feels the way it feels. And that connected back to our partner Dan's B2Me journey, right? Like we have to almost shake people out of the treadmill they're on. We have to surprise them and get a burst of energy and enthusiasm that's unexpected. Otherwise, our brains are literally like, nope, not important, go over there. Like we're so efficient cognitively that if we don't introduce something exciting
Mhm.
in hopefully positive ways. We all know a lot of people do it in negative ways, but this is all positive ways. That's how you unlock that other natural part of the our capabilities is to just excite us and then bring us through something. And now we've got their attention, which is also a hot topic of conversation these days, how to get people's attention. What do you think, Leo?
Thinking a lot of things.
I know that's how I
Every
felt
time
when you
y'all
were
speak, I'm like, ooh,
talking.
I got all these ideas, So one of the things I'll tell everyone is I have a graphic design degree, and I've been trained to be creative. Okay. I never actually saw myself that way when I was growing up. I mean, I solved problems and things like that. I always enjoyed that, but I never saw myself as an artist growing up because I was actually really bad at traditional art. And I ended up in design school. And what I enjoyed about it was thinking differently about visual communication. That's what graphic designers do. And every single time you have a problem in front of you, there's a new possible for you to discover, right? Visually, what does it look like? How do you lay it out and all that? What fonts do you use and what can you create? And I always enjoyed that creative process. But I was different in the sense that I'm sort of like, I like to describe myself as like half left, half right brain because there were there were designers in my studies that were incredible art, like literally, truly, that I could never even be close to what they do. But I also had a kind of a tech brain. So I'm like, I could program, I could do websites, could do all this other stuff. But I was trained with tools and techniques to express creativity. I was taught actual skills and tools and methodologies that I could follow. And I think it's sort of a misnomer out there that, you're either creative or you're not. I'm like, again, it's like a muscle. It really is. I mean, I went through 4 years of education on creativity. I mean, really, that's what design was all about. And, I've been able to bridge that into the business world. I think it's just because of the way I think. It's just a bit different. So, I'm not completely so artistic that I'm like, I don't know this business stuff. And, there are people that can't kind of bridge that gap where I sort of sit in the middle. And when I used to work at Chick-fil-A corporate. They hired me to make innovation better. And they're like, what do you got? What do you want to do? And I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm just going to help people be creative like I've learned to be creative. And I taught real tools and strategies. And one of the things was because I'm a playful person, I brought play to the things that I did. I think
Mhm.
it's I think I used to use a phrase like, let's just play with it. Or we say, let's try it, right? And that's an invitation to experiment. And that's what innovation needs. We don't know what's going to work or not. And if we're so afraid of it failing, we'll never try. And Joanne, you mentioned perfectionism. I'm actually a true perfectionist. I am at the end of the day, I'm a perfectionist. I'll move my slides around as a keynote speaker, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's just like 5 pixels to the right and down. I'm like, and then I have to remind myself, like, Leo, nobody cares except you. Like, is it really worth that kind of time? But as an innovator, I actually had to learn to let go of perfectionism. I redesigned Chick-fil-A's innovation center called Hatch, and I called it a prototype, but I was afraid to release it to the wild because I'm like, oh, ooh, maybe I need to do this other thing, and I'm like, no, no. In innovation, that's a prototype, and prototype means that we put out our first draft and we get feedback and we learn. So I had to kind of fight my design brain of. I don't say all designers are perfectionists, but I was a designer perfectionist. So I'm like, I had to fight myself and be like, let's go with that. Take on innovation, Leo, and like let's go with that and let's
Yeah.
just learn and see. And it was honestly a playful experiment. I had people as my human lab rats, and I would try stuff and see what I'm like, ooh, what are we gonna do now? And I would learn, but it was through play that really I think enabled me to do that and let go of some of that perfectionism that I struggled with.
Yeah.
Leo, we really are just like I said this when I first met you over the last year plus of knowing you. We are just like cut from the same cloth. It's like I literally told my teammates at Microsoft who were all, technical engineers designing data center solutions. I was like, you guys experiment with nuts and bolts and wires and fluids and stuff. I experiment with people. It's like I try to get people together. But also, this Innovating Out Loud series, first the monthly webinar, and now my weekly writing, that is exactly me trying to practice saying it ugly, putting it out into the world, not worrying if I get something wrong or if, it sounds stupid or just challenging my own sense of pride and obsessive editing. That's how I am. I'm an obsessive editor. I just every Sunday morning wake up, think about what I learned in the last week or want to know more about. I do a little bit of research. AI makes it a lot easier. I write a piece. I limit myself by 2 p.m. every Sunday, West Coast. I got to publish. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm 16 weeks in, and I already see how my writing is improving, right? So that's the other benefit here. When you do produce more and experiment more and put it out into the world and get that feedback, you get better. You don't only just keep your talents alive, but you get better at them. And I think every musician and artist in the world is like rolling their eyes, going, yeah, duh. But professionals and like uh, business business people, we forget that. We get so caught up in the day to day that there is a practice and a discipline that you have to exercise all the time.
Well, you guys both hit on something. Perfectionism is one thing. Professionalism is another thing. And I think, Joanne, when you opened, it's like somewhere between 5 and 25, right? Like our playfulness gets compressed, and I think maybe it gets confused with professionalism, right? Like for somehow like professionalism is almost like the opposite of play and fun
Yeah.
in some cases, and like it feels like we need to course correct somewhere in there. It's interesting. I think even with COVID and like some of the more kind of business norms of like you show up every day. Some of that's been laxed, and I've seen maybe a little bit more play. People see into each other's personal lives, like my home office. But I still think that there's opportunity to kind of, disconnect or reorient like professionalism versus playfulness, because
Yeah.
I think there's a world where those two, are not mutually exclusive, but they're one and the same. You can be both professional and playful and have fun at the same time. And so I'd just be curious your guys' reactions to kind of that concept, and how do you think about that? How do you be both
Yeah.
professional and playful at the same time?
Joanne, you want to take that one first?
Sure. You
You wear
know,
orange glasses on a webinar.
we list my dog as part of the team on our website. He's our joy officer. Um, Immediately what came to mind was what not to do. Um, I have encountered plenty of people, and my inner circle and I joke about it, so I'll share it. We encounter these older, senior, entitled, I would say, people that show up to meetings, they lean back in the chair, oh, their belly's out, and they just ha ha ha, that's great, that's fun. Let's, if we're not having fun, we're not doing it right. And that is neither playful or professional. that is not what we're that's not what we're advocating for here. I think, Leo, you embody the distinction, which is you're not being joyful and playful, one, from a place of performance. You're just letting your own playfulness and joy out, but you do that to bring people in, right? Like, this does not bring people in, right? And so I think we get these conflicting messages, especially when you're a young professional going into these places with those people doing the performance, that you're like, well, when do I get to behave like that? I have to obviously be professional and get to that level before I'm allowed to laugh at meetings. And it's like, no, you never want to get to that place. You want to just show up. Leo, your stories about how you show up and navigated the pushback you got from some people, but the embrace you got from others. I think that's a great case study in how to do it right.
It's it was really interesting. So I've worked in corporate organizations for many, many years, and corporate has this. Every corporate culture has their own culture, right? They're all very unique in that way, but there is this sort of corporate professionalism that I think we all can kind of feel. And I never felt like I belonged in that atmosphere, if for lack of better terms. And I think I shared this on one of our earlier calls, but I'm really stubborn. So I'm kind of like it's not that I am what I am, take it or leave it, but I'm like I fundamentally believe that I have unique gifts and skill sets that I bring. And for me to conform to whatever that is, that's not me showing up the best way that I know how and to do the best work that I could. Because when we have a dissonance of who we are and we're fighting against this corporate atmosphere, it's really hard to show up and do your best work. I mean, you're fighting all sorts of sort of cognitive things. When I worked at a big insurance company, you can see which one, but I worked at a big insurance company in the United States, and we had two headquarters. One was called Corporate North and one was called Corporate South. And it was really interesting because the corporate atmosphere was totally different between these two. They're just two separate buildings. It's like on the same street, right? But Corporate North, it was more of we're all wearing suits, very, very high professional in that sort of air. People were super friendly and great, great workers. But at I didn't really feel I was at Corporate North for a time. I did never really felt like I was, in that atmosphere. And then I was allocated to work on a team at Corporate South. And at Corporate South, people were wearing hoodies, jeans, t-shirts. We were getting incredible work done, but it just felt like all of some of that unnecessary pressure was removed. And
Yeah.
you wouldn't even know who the leader was in meetings. It wasn't like, oh, I'm Leo, the boss, right? Like sitting in the room. Like I had no idea. But it was amazing because it was more collaborative, the work was better, we could all speak freely, all the perspectives are shared. And I'm like, that type of, and we would laugh and we would have fun and we'd be playful with each other. And that I noticed such a dramatic difference. And I'm like, I vibe with this so much more. And when you think of like innovation people, I feel like that's the type of the corporate South kind of folks, that we can really just do our best work together. Like, if shouldn't we just feel comfortable at work to do our best work? Like, do I really need to be
Right?
looking a certain way or using certain phrases all the time? Like, let's just get really good work done. And um, I find that the best way that I can show up is being me. And another organization that I worked at corporately, there was a very strong corporate culture there. And I never, when I first arrived, and I'm like, I don't even know if I kind of navigate or fit in this place. And I was advised by a mentor to me. He's like, Leo, he's like, don't play any of these games. He's like, just show up the way you are. He's like, that's the best thing that you can do. And I took his advice. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm just going to show up and be me. I'm like, I can't be someone else that I'm not. Trying to play that game is so tiring, and trying to pretend like you're this thing. I'm like, and then I just did me, and better things happen. Like people were drawn to the work that I was doing. I was feeling more fulfilled and all of that. So there's a space, I think, for that, and we have to model it to one another, because when you see others doing that, you're like, yeah, okay, let me just, maybe I have to peel off some things and I can just show up as myself.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
want to just put one asterisk, a shout out to all my friends who don't fit molds. Um, Particularly, I have a few really brilliant Black women in my network who show up as they are and get booted. Women in general, a lot of times, if you show up as you are and not in the gender norm, whew, you get all kinds of resistance, but there's an answer to it. It's not ideal. We are not living in ideal times. We never have, we never probably will, but you find your people, right? And if you can't, this is what I liked, Leo. You found your people in the companies that you were in. You found mentors that believed in you and opened doors. You found peers that wanted to show up with you. When I was writing the book, actually, I found more of my people throughout Microsoft than I found in my immediate circle at Microsoft. And it gave me a whole nother perspective of the company where I did feel a little combative all the time against the things happening around me. And then all of a sudden, I was like meeting these people that were just like us. And they didn't look like me, dress like me, talk like me, were not from the same places as me, but we show up the same way. And then if that doesn't work, you can always, I love this part. Taryn, you pointed this out. If none of that works, go out and build it yourself, right? Go out, find your people, join what they're doing. Or, yeah, like there's so many options that sometimes we don't either remember or haven't been presented to us. So I just want to put that asterisk that it doesn't always work out for everybody to show up and be yourself.
And I think what's cool is we started, this latest conversation of how do you be more playful and joyful at work. But what we've all just talked about is about being yourself. And the connection I'm going to make is like to be more joyful and more playful, you first have to feel true to yourself and who you are. That's kind of the unlock. And we are all born with certain level of creativity and play inherently. Like go observe a child, any child, outgoing, somebody who's a little bit more conservative. It doesn't matter. There's a level of play and creativity within each and every one of us. And so I think I'm connecting those dots of being joyful and being playful is like first being true. So you
Yeah.
can unlock, right, those things about you, which will bring your version of that, forward, right? Which will really help you get there. And then like I was just thinking like, man, wouldn't it be so cool if we had like a neuroscientist on this call with us? Because there's a lot of science that supports kind of what we're talking about as well, and what stress does to the prefrontal cortex. And the more you're trying to be somebody you're not, or the more you're trying to conform and fit in, like the more stress you're carrying inherently, which
Yeah.
starts to shut down the parts of the brain that actually drive creativity and drive innovation. And so all of this is very full circle, but you have to start internally, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love how you put a nice bow on that there. That was great. Oh,
Yep.
100%.
Well done. And with a subliminal shout out to Angus Fletcher, who is on our wish list of guests for the neuroscience.
Awesome. Okay. This is another kind of tangential topic, but I think it's interesting. When we think of innovation, almost naturally, it's like let's solve the pain points, right? Let's go and solve the pains. And there's tremendous amount of value. Some of the best innovations ever were created because we solved the pain points. But there's also another lens to look through instead of like solving the pain points of thinking through what brings more joy and optimism to the workplace and how might we approach kind of innovation or problem solving with that lens versus resolving pain points. When you guys have done that or approached that, how has the outcome been different or surprised you, or what does that actually look like?
Yeah. You know what's interesting about the starting with a pain point is if it's pain, then there's an immediacy to it, and you're already converging on something that has a box of time that it we need it now, right?
Mhm.
And then you lose that ability, or you may lose that ability to diverge before you converge. And Leo, with your background, like you said, you spent 4 years being educated in creativity. One of the things I've noticed in the difference between my friends that went through design disciplines and my friends that and myself that went through engineering disciplines, engineering, you spend 4 years converging. How do I solve this? What's the answer? Who's solved it already? Where's the equation? Nothing wrong with that. Convergence is part of the process. But if you don't step back and diverge first, which I believe designers are taught, how many ways could we explore this? What are all the possibilities? It's a very open exploration. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you do that step back and look around.
That is such a fascinating delineation, Joanne. I've never heard that, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, you're completely right. So as a designer, you are taught to explore all the possibilities. I sometimes it's just because some of the ideas you come up, they're not so great. So I just got to keep pushing. And I'll give you an example. I had to design as a student designer one project which was called A Day in the Life. And it was a typographical project where you could only use letter forms. And when I was
Ooh.
assigned this project, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, how am I gonna? This is really hard. And they do that intentionally, right, to stretch you so you can really push the edges on divergence. And I remember, and this was also my perfectionism happening. I had my little sketchbook, and I went through all these little design iterations, and literally 200 of them. And I'm literally going through them like, this is awful. I'm gonna fail, like so bad. Oh man, I'm never gonna do this. And I'm pushing myself. I'm like, there's got to be a solution, right? And so I'm exploring all of these. And I remember when I got to number 200, I was like, oh, that
Ooh.
is really cool. I'm like, that's a really worthwhile design. I'm like, wow, and it's I am like you just said, I am always pushing for more. In design thinking, there's a phrase called HMW, which stands for how might we, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. But in the
Karen's
creative
the queen
problem
of it.
Yes. And so in the creative problem solving world, there's a phrase called WMBATW, and that stands for what might be all the ways. And
Oh,
I love that because it is kind of this challenge of divergence. There are unlimited possibilities, I believe, in any problem that we face or any possibility that we face. And it's a journey of discovery and joy for me. I love to do this exploration. I think it's fun. My energy lights up. I mean, I love creating ideas. And so I like using what might be all the ways because it's like a call, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for possibility. Like, what are the ways in which we can explore all the different ways to do this, right? And then we can choose on the engineering side. We need the strategies in terms of implementation. We need that brain part and that skill set on the other side of innovation to do that well. But I love that phrase, and so I like to. I was in Warsaw, Poland this week, and I was sharing that because I'm like, let's explore this. This should be enjoyable, like fun. I mean, maybe not everybody loves doing idea generation, but I think it's the best thing ever. I could do it all day long. So that's a great prompt to do that. And there's So all these techniques and tools that I've learned, I've made up along the way that help people do that. Not everybody can just look at a prompt and be like, oh, let me come up with 100 ideas. Like, I don't know what to do, right? So again, but it's a learned skill, right? That we develop.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to come up with 100 or 200 things with your friends, your
Oh yeah.
peers, people with different mindsets, different, tool sets. I love that. What might be all the ways we could do this?
Mhm.
Yep.
And to your point about not everybody loves exploration, I think it's fair to say we live at one end of, well, everything is loopy. I always say that. So we live at one place on the circle. Um, but to your point, there's a place in the loop of innovation for everyone. And so if you back to be true to you and find your place, if that really isn't where you find joy, like exploring the 200 possibilities, and that just is like, oh my God, get to an answer already, just don't hang out there. There's the whole life cycle of innovation. There's people we need to synthesize all this and turn it into action. And then once it's out in the world, to make it better and maintain it and grow it. Don't force yourself into the environment that makes you unhappy, because here's something that's very true. You're going to make everybody else unhappy too. Like the worst thing ever in that environment is the person like, we already tried that. It doesn't work. Why would we waste our time there? And it's like, oh my God, you're killing my soul, man. Just leave. We will come back to you. We will come back to you when we have tangible experiments.
I have stories about that too.
Oh, all of us at this point in the innovation cycle that live in that space, that divergence, we all have stories of just being beaten up by the people that don't want to do divergence. So
I love what you said. I mean, in innovation, there is literally a space for everybody. Whatever your
everybody,
giftings are, your skill sets, the things that light you up, we need that. It's not one is better than the other because you
right?
can't innovate without all of it.
Mhm.
And I think that's sometimes that's a revelation for people because some people think innovation is just those idea generation folks that like love the exploration. But I'm like, I'll I say this very publicly. I don't love implementation. I just like coming up with ideas and I'd be like, that was great, y'all. Like I'm good. We don't need to implement any of those. I'm just so happy that we just come with all these ideas. But well, no ideas will get done, right? No work gets done if not, on the back end. And so I can force myself to do, and I can. Of course, I can implement, but why not have the skilled people that are 100 times better than me to do that work, which they also love and will do it better, more effectively, and more
Yes.
efficiently than I could, right? And so when we partner together as a collaborative with all those skill sets, I mean, you have an incredible team, and you can get some amazing things done.
Mhm. And that's why it's going back to like play and joy mean different things for different people, or different people, right, get joy from different things. And so that's where, right, it all kind of comes back to you, where you're plugging in your environment, et cetera. And if I think about the courage it takes to be yourself, which we now know unlocks playfulness and joy, which then unlocks innovation opportunities and growth, right? If you come all the way down, it's like the courage to be yourself is it's not easy. It's not it's a skill set. I'd almost say we were talking about creativity being a skill set, right? But to step out. So as you guys have navigated that, and Leo, you're like particular, right? You gave the example when you were in corporate, and it's like the day you just kind of stopped trying to conform was the day that, things changed. But it also kind of has ripple effects when you think about your behaviors and how they influence others. And like when we were talking, it's like, that time where, the first person to raise their hand and then everybody else starts chiming in. This is a little bit like that. So how have you guys both navigated, having the courage to be yourselves in those situations where it just felt like you were being held back?
You want to go, Leo?
Yeah, I'm thinking of some memories. I think us. I can't remember the name of this poem, but there's this poem that I grew up when I was in university. I did this class called Voice and Speech, and it basically the poem is around showing up as yourself. And it says there's a line that I remember that says, when you let your light shine, it automatically allows others to do the same.
Mm.
And something that I never realized until I got to Chick-fil-A and I was working there on, helping them make innovation better, was I never realized that, we always talk about company culture and we kind of always think it's like top down or somehow it happens from your leadership and all of that. I realized when I was at Chick-fil-A that it actually starts on the individual level, and that's the way I approached it. So psychological safety, as an example, is something very important to me personally because I have a TEDx on that, which is another thing. But I went through a horrific experience as a student and in a very unpsychologically safe environment. And I always promised myself, because that happened to me, I will never do that for someone else. And so that became fundamentally important to me in innovation specifically because I'm like, I've at least gone through all the things about innovation, the hardship and the good stuff. And I'm like, if I want to teach people this, I need to create a safe space for them to explore. And
Mm.
so I created that for people unknowingly, and then it just kind of rippled. And then so all these people would show up and like, hey, Leo, this innovation stuff, like, can I learn more? Like, what's this all about? And I realized, but it took me courage to speak up and like show up as me.
Mm.
And but then it was just like you said, that ripple effect started to happen, and then more and more people started like, what is all the? And then they're like, I see this other person that I know that works with you, and like they're happier now somehow, and they're finding more fulfillment. Like, what is it? I'm like, this is innovation. They're like, what? Like, what a strange way for transformation. I'm like, no, I'm like, if you're like creative stuff and I can give you an outlet, I can teach you how to use this in your work, and like droves of people started showing up for these things, and it was amazing to me. But it goes back to like
Beautiful.
to that poem, really, when you let your light shine, it automatically lets others do the same because you're an example to them. And we're hopefully trying to do positive and encouraging things. And people want that, right? Like you want to show up and do the best work that you uniquely can, right? You're not trying to be somebody else. So hopefully that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
There's one of my favorite hymns, and I'm not any one denomination, but I've encountered a lot through different things. And one of my favorite hymns is This Little Light of Mine. I'm gonna let it shine. I sing it to myself often. Um, I cannot claim to have come to it. My journey was not as pretty or productive as yours, Leo. Um, it started really for me in youth. I'm just, Taryn knows this. I am a super nerd. Like, I will go deep into 15 subjects to try to understand things. Like, I get giddy about obtaining new knowledge, which is why I need a team to ground me. But I was like that at 5. So I showed up at kindergarten like, woohoo! Like, I already know my alphabet. I already know how to add. I got older brothers. They've been teaching me. Well, you can imagine how that 5-year-old was received by her peers. It
Mm.
was not pretty. So I learned early on, like, I got beat up a lot, like, a lot. And then ironically, what happened was by the time I was a teenager, I got exposed to the world at large outside of my small town. At the same time, I started martial arts. So this is the weird thing about life, right? Like, you learn things in these really random, non-connected disciplines, but you can pull from them into whatever it is you're trying to solve. So in martial arts, at least in my school, when you get to a certain level and you're going to start sparring in real time with other people, my sensei would actually take us youngings out onto the floor and he would knock us out. Just like, you'd line up, you'd have been practicing for a year and a half now to be in the sparring ring. And like, he's, an 8th degree black belt. So one tap on the chin and you're on the floor. But the whole point of that was they bring you back with the smelling salts, and he'd look you in the eye as your sensei who you trust in this process. And he'd say, did you die? And you're like, no, sensei. And he's like, so are you getting afraid to get punched? No, sensei. Because the last thing you want to do is show up on that mat afraid you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else. So, like, I put all these pieces together. It's like I got beat up a lot. I learned how to physically protect myself, but in the course of protecting myself and seeing the world, I'm like, people can punch me, people can shoot me down, they can say no. I once told somebody pretty much 99% of my life is hearing the word no. But I've just it's not going to kill me. Like that's what I've learned over the years, and it hasn't always been pretty. I actually think I have learned through recent events how to be more graceful in that journey, because I used to show up expecting to get beat up and shot and put down. And there's a combativeness that I was coming into it with. And now I've let that go, and I'm just like, no, if you don't, that's fine. You're not my people. Moving on. But that took time. It took time.
I think the key is to just start, right? Start with the uncomfortableness and start
Yeah.
kind of being true to you. And I think the thing when people on our team is she's like, I often realize like so many people's behaviors and reactions to me has nothing to do with me and like everything to do with them. And that's really stuck with
Absolutely.
me because we all, human nature take things personally. But if you develop that mindset of just like, maybe this wasn't me, this was this was because of a result of something I have no idea, right? Or maybe an insecurity that individual is facing. That maybe
Yeah.
can give you the freedom to be more yourself, take more risks, which then drives the creativity and kind of inspiration and joy we all need to innovate really well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
awesome. I knew that would fly by because they
It
always do. This
did.
topic was so fun. We have a little bit of time for questions and there's some really good ones. So I'm going to pivot to those really quick. So this is great. How do you introduce play or divergence into environments that are really risk averse or highly performance driven?
Mm. You're the pro, Leo.
So
Teach us.
I relationships really do matter in corporate settings. So I was known at Chick-fil-A, so I facilitated a lot of innovation workshops, and I was known for doing unusual activities that were different than normal business things. And what helped people that were not used to, like, if I'm bringing out Lego or doing improv or all the other activities, was I always told them, like, I have your best outcome in mind. I know that you want this to happen.
Mhm.
My expertise is in creativity and unlocking the collective good and the innovative mindset and all of that. So I'm like, so if you trust me to do this work for you, I'm going to get you there with unconventional methods because I believe it is the best way. Not because I want to have fun and play for that only for that sake, but because
Yeah.
I believe these different ways of approaching this will get you that outcome. And they're like, okay. But I had to develop relational equity with those folks. Um,
Trust.
because otherwise, they're like, who is this guy and why is he doing all this stuff?
Mhm.
However, so that's the one thing I would say we need to have relational equity and trust that's built. However, if you don't have that, because I'm an entrepreneur now also, and I have worked with teams where I'm busting out Lego because we're doing a serious play strategy session and so on and so forth. And I'm with clients and their teams that have never met me before. And there's this one particular one that I just want to mention because there's a bunch of CFOs and CEOs of billion-dollar companies. I'm brought in as the facilitator for this association strategy meeting, and they were
Mhm.
not prepped that we were going to do Lego at all. So sometimes the higher up you go in the food chain, Lego becomes less desirable, perhaps sometimes because there's a perception that it's a toy. So I come in not knowing any of this backstory because I thought they were all prepped. I get a lot of brows raised up. It's kind of like, what is this? What are we doing for this? Who is this guy? And sometimes you just have to believe in enough yourself in what you're doing that you will bring people along with you, and you
Yeah.
kind of help. And I
Mhm.
knew, I'm like, oh, when I saw like disgruntled faces at me, not snarling, but I could be like, okay, this will be interesting. And so I told them, like, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, it may be different. And so I acknowledge the elephant in the room, right? And then I'm like, I'm going to bring you along and you're going to see, right? So I'm promising them, but that helps bring them along the journey with me because it's not that I'm discrediting how they feel. I acknowledge it, but I'm doing this because I think the outcome will be better, and I guarantee it will be. So I think that helps bring people along.
Yeah. I think that sums it up. I mean, the one thing I'll say in response is, and you may not get them all, right? Like that's like this instant trust moment where some people are going to be like, all right, I don't know about this guy, but we paid him to be here and I'm in the room. So I'm going to go with it. And you're going to bring a lot of people along, but you may not bring everybody, but as long as you bring most of them or some of them or one of them, then that's a win, right? And over time it ripples.
Yep. I think the comments, just to double click on aligning on the outcomes, the desired outcomes, it's like if you can establish the clarity of what you're both you just of what you're both trying to achieve, you need to align on the outcomes. If you have the trust and relational equity, you can disagree on how you get there as long as you can agree on how you get to kind of the same shared place.
Yeah.
Um,
I do want to double
okay.
click on what Joanne did say.
Yeah.
It is true. You will not always win over everybody. And I have learned over time, if you can let that really get to you. Like really, as a facilitator, you can be like, oh,
Hmm.
Terrence not with us. Like, you can get really deflated if not everyone. And so sometimes it's just like, yeah, I'm going to focus on the outcome. I'm going to bring along the people that want to be part of this journey. Not everyone's going to always be open-minded. It's just reality. For whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. But if they're not, that's okay. As long as they're not affecting the outcome of the group. If they're not, if maybe you keep pouting at you or yelling at you or disrupting, I mean, that's a different story. But
Innovation hecklers.
yeah, exactly. So that is a good point because not everyone will be won over, but I have seen it time and time again where the majority, if not all, are won over because in business, when you have an extremely positive outcome, you can't refute it.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
Yep.
Okay. Great. One more question here. This is more of like, we've seen a lot in innovation when you start small and build something, right? It grows kind of the snowball effect. And so, one way to start incorporating more play into the workplace is by starting to do it in kind of small chunks. And this is more of a hack kind of driven question. Um, What's a good routine to start up a meeting to encourage more playful or humor elements kind of for that meeting? Are there any hacks, tools, tips, tricks, things that you've used to do that?
I want to
Oh,
hear Joanne first.
I'm gonna pull, but I know my toolbox is not as deep as yours. I actually at Microsoft, I started one meeting. It was at the very beginning of my tenure, and I was meeting 30 collaborative partners essentially for the first time in a workshop environment. And I had them spend 5 minutes with another person talking about their 5 year old self. And I still remember, ironically, because this person became an innovation heckler. So I don't know what went wrong in the intervening months, but the person across from them discovered that they were from Alaska and their favorite thing as a kid was their moon boots. And so you just pictured this like 50-year-old person, but as a 5-year-old walking around in their moon boots. And like, how could you not let go your preconceptions of somebody when you're imagining them trucking around in their moon boots? And the point was they learned about each other and then shared about the other person, not about themselves.
Mhm.
And it was really, we learned a lot about each other in a very quick exercise.
I love that. I I use a lot of improvisation activities to warm people up because I think the framing of your mindset is really important when it comes to any type of business session or workshop that you're leading, and the way you frame it is helpful. And improvisation has so many wonderful techniques that really start to develop the right mindsets, like more collaboration, more open-mindedness. So when Joanne was talking about divergence, there are activities that lead themselves towards divergent type activities. One of them is, remember the show Whose Line Is it
Oh, I love
Anyway?
that show.
Yeah, so there was this the props game, and the props game is I have random stuff on my desk here. So if I take this, which is blue painter's tape, it's like what else could this be, right? And you can imagine just all sorts of use cases. But when you're doing that, you're actually exercising divergent thinking. You're coming up with possibilities. And so you can warm up in a meeting or a workshop with like this, grab a random object in front of you and come up with use cases that it is not actually. And what can you come up with? And you can gamify it. Whatever, pair up, or maybe you're in a group, whoever has the most wins, you can kind of gamify that stuff. But I like to start meetings with those type of activities as well as during and after breaks and things like that, because that really puts you in the right mental state. And
Yeah.
we often, a lot of us are back-to-back meetings, right? In corporate, you're running from one building to the next and you're stressed out, right? We're going back to the whole stressed out state. When you're
Yeah.
stressed out, creativity shuts down, and if you're in that and you're coming in, you're like, let's come up with the best ideas for a company. I'm like, well, really? I'm like stressed out. I'm trying to catch my breath. I've been running, from meeting to meeting for 4 hours today. Like, I don't know what's going on. We need sort of that reset to get back in focus. So for all the folks listening, improvisation techniques are incredible. You can just Google that and you can find tons. And you can even be specific, like improvisation technique for collaboration, improvisation technique for divergent thinking. You can type in all of these different types of queries, and I guess now with AI, yeah, you can pull up tons of stuff, and they'll
They'll
teach you
put
how
the
to
whole
do them.
workshop together for
I
you.
think they do the whole workshop for you too. But don't do that. You should do it
Don't
yourself
do
tomorrow.
that. Call Leo.
Yeah,
One of
we've been one that I loved, and it was just asking people around the table of like, think of a time in your life where you were in kind of like a zen. You had so much joy and you were like happy and excited. Like, what were you doing? And everybody took, kind of 2 minutes because typically something comes and thought about it. And then we went around the table and shared. And it was like the people were like in high school when we went to the Magic Kingdom for band, and we were walking, down Main Street, and like you heard everybody's stories, or like when I was going up and going to my grandparents' house and was helping them kind of harvest the vegetables, and it had nothing to do with what we were talking about. We were talking about business transformation, which we know is hard and challenging, but just the state that 5 minute activity that you kind of get your head into by kind of giving your brain perspective that you're in a safe place, you're in a creative place, was so impactful to the way that the rest of that conversation went. And so that's another
Yeah.
one I'd add to your two. I think it plays off of both of them.
I love
Joanne,
that
you were
too.
gonna say
I,
something.
I, I
Oh, I
one
was
thing
just
popped up in my head.
yeah, I was going to say, Leo, the how do you make your toast exercise? You must know that one from the design world.
Tell me
No?
about that one. Maybe I don't know if I know that one.
I got this from our design lead, Kent, which is, and it gets people drawing early in a session because a lot of us are afraid to draw because maybe we don't think we're good enough, but just draw it ugly. How do you make your toast in the morning? And you draw like, oh, I go to the toaster, I get my plate, I get I have a 4 slot toaster, not a 2 slot toaster. And it just, again, it disrupts the treadmill you're on. It gets you out of your head and your words and puts it into a pencil and paper or whatever you're working with. And I've always loved the how to make toast exercise.
I have not heard that one. I'm stealing that one. The one thought I did have also is when you can get people laughing, the earlier the better in a session, the better, because I can't remember where this statistic was, but I did hear it from some sort of smarter person than me in neuroscience or whatnot. But when you laugh within 180, I think it was 2 minutes, it's either 2 minutes to 3 minutes, 120 seconds to 180 seconds, all your brain cells light up. So what that effectively means is all the neurons in your brain are lit up, both sides, left and right. So when you laugh, all of those are lit up. So you
Mm.
imagine when that's lit up, all your brain cells are firing. When you start doing idea generation or sessions, more of your brain cells have become activated. So laughing literally just does that within like 2, 3 minutes, which is amazing. So it's not that you have to stand up and tell jokes, but
Mm.
there's, again, if you go back to those improvisation activities,
Yeah.
there are so many of them that people just start laughing because of whatever it is that you're doing. It's funny. And so if you can make people laugh or feel rapport, like you said, Taryn, with just these personal stories, that builds the camaraderie, that builds psychological safety in the room, and that help
Yeah.
people settle down and that anxiety to go away because these meetings can be kind of stressful. And that
Mhm.
helps people settle in to start, thinking better and more innovating and being more creative. So
Mhm.
Love
Awesome.
it.
That's a perfect place to end. We're right at time. There are a couple more questions we didn't get to, so we'll try to address those in follow-up communications. But this was an absolute delight. Hopefully, everybody kind of got that rewiring of the treadmill from this. And Leo, where can people find you, and where can they connect with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I'm at Everyone Can Innovate on LinkedIn and Instagram. That's because that's what I believe. Everyone can innovate. So, hey, look me up there. And you can look me up on aboundinnovation.ca if you're needing help with keynotes or corporate training or Lego Serious Play facilitation.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you.
on LinkedIn Learning.
Oh, yes, that's right. Well,
Both of us
surprise.
are on
Joanne is a
LinkedIn
LinkedIn
Learning.
Learning instructor, and I'm a LinkedIn Learning instructor. So we both have courses there. Come check us out.
We'll make
Great.
them free. One of
And we can
we'll
make them free for
well,
y'all. So
yeah.
check us out
So
there and keep this innovation journey going.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Take care.
thank
Bye.
you.